What is the Violence Against Women Act? It's actually a big law that Congress passed that contains a lot of provisions in different areas to protect victims of domestic violence in the United States. But for purposes of this video, I'll focus on the immigration portion of VAWA. It is a way that immigrants who are in relationships of cruelty, which often look like domestic violence, but not always, can apply for a green card on their own without the assistance or the knowledge of their abuser. Because so often an immigrant who's married to a U.S. citizen, or they're the parent or the child of a U.S. citizen, find themselves in a disparate power relationship where their abuser may say, "You don't have a driver's license, you're an immigrant, I'm going to get you deported," and they don't take the steps of filing for the green card for their spouse or their parent or their child because they like having this person under their thumb. Well, VAWA gives the power back to the immigrant who's in a relationship where there is cruelty to apply on their own without the help of their abuser. They can be still in a marriage, they can be separated, they can be within 2 years of a divorce from a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. And it also helps children of U.S. citizens or permanent residents, and it also helps parents of U.S. citizens. That's a lesser known one, where the parents have been subjected to cruelty by their adult U.S. citizen child. And the way the application works is you file for a green card, and you don't at all have to tell the U.S. citizen what you're doing. And you have to prove that you are a person of good moral character, that the relationship exists, and that you've suffered cruelty. And there's lots of ways to prove that, even if you don't have, hospital records or police reports. We've done lots of cases where you haven't had that type of evidence and we've still been successful. But ultimately, to distill it, VAWA protects immigrants who are in close relationship with U.S. citizens or permanent residents, and it gives them a way to get legal status and a green card even when they're under threat in the relationship. We talk a lot about VAWA, or the Violence Against Women Act, but did you know it benefits both women and men? It is not exclusive to women, and in fact, I've had many, many male clients who have won green card cases through VAWA. It helps people who are in relationships with U.S. citizens or permanent residents. Most often, that's a spouse. So if someone is in a relationship with a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, they're suffering cruelty, they are a man or woman, they should consult with an immigration lawyer to see if they can qualify. And everything is kept confidential. You don't have to tell anybody about what you're doing. So VAWA, or the Violence Against Women Act, is a way that immigrants can get their green card without the assistance of their abuser. The whole thing is done by mail. You mail in an application to immigration, and you have to prove certain things, like you are a person of good moral character, you are in a valid marriage or relationship with this person, it's real, and that you've suffered cruelty in the marriage. And they use what's called an any credible evidence standard. That means basically anything you got. You don't have to have a police report necessarily. You don't have to have medical records or a hospital record necessarily. I mean, they help if you have them. But you can use things like a letter from your therapist, a letter from your best friend, photos of bruises that you've had, text messages that your abuser sent you, emails that your abuser sent you. There's lots of different types of ways that you can prove a VAWA case. And everything gets mailed to immigration, and the decision also comes to you by mail. One of the benefits of VAWA that I really appreciate for my clients is the protection provision. That says that once someone has applied for VAWA, immigration is prohibited from talking to the abuser or receiving information from the abuser. So often these victims of violence are under constant threat of deportation by their abuser. But do you know what? The minute you file that application with immigration can't even talk to that person anymore. So that's your secret weapon. If you're getting that threat, call an immigration lawyer, get your VAWA case filed. You don't have to worry about those threats from your abuser ever again. The Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA, is a way that immigrants can get their green card if they're in an abusive relationship with a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. The idea of this program is to help the immigrants who are under threat or abuse and who need to get their green card. It's a humanitarian case, the point of which is to help victims of violence. The U visa, on the other hand, is a visa for victims of crime who assist law enforcement in the investigation. It's also available to victims of domestic violence, even when the abuser is undocumented. But the main difference between these programs is that VAWA is, the purpose of it is for the victims, and therefore it doesn't require a police report. It doesn't require cooperation with law enforcement. Just by virtue of having suffered cruelty in a relationship, an applicant can qualify. But it does have to be the abuse by a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. Whereas the U visa doesn't require that the abuser was a citizen or a permanent resident. However, the purpose is public safety, so you do have to have a police report and you have to get a certification from law enforcement saying, yes, this person was a victim, yes, they have been of assistance in our investigation. And those are the main differences between VAWA and U visa.